when we're looking at Congress, we need to talk about how these people get into these positions. And if we mention the formal qualifications that are noted in the Constitution, there's really only three. We've touched on them a little bit before. In order to be in the House of Representatives, you have to be of the age of 25 years or older. And in the Senate, you have to be 30 years or older. These are not very big hurdles. They're just meant to have a very low bar that you can get over, and you have to be in there. You do have to be a citizen of the U.S. for 7 years to be in the House, and for 9 years to be in the Senate. So you cannot come from another country and then immediately be a part of Congress. You have to be a citizen. Our paths to citizenship are that you can be born here, in which case you're a citizen immediately, or you can be naturalized, like you come from another country and you have to wait 7 years before you can be naturalized, and so there it is. As soon as you become a citizen after that 7-year term of immigrating here, you can then run for the House of Representatives. So not a high bar there either. And then you have to be a resident of the district or the state in which you're going to be running. Some states require you to live there for at least a year in order to gain residency. Others require like 30 days or 60 days, and I think New York is one of those. That's why Hillary Clinton could be from Arkansas and then just move to New York for 30 days and, hey, I'm running for the Senate, and boom, she can be elected. So pretty much based on her star power, just nationally known, New Yorkers said, okay, we'll take her in and we'll elect her as a senator, even though she's been here for less than a year. So that can happen. But you just have to meet the residency requirements of that state. And that's it. These are the formal qualifications that are listed in the Constitution. However, as you probably would guess, there are a whole lot more informal qualifications besides these right here. Okay? So the first one is education. To my knowledge, everyone in Congress currently elected has a college degree. That's a pretty telling thing, okay? Because only about 25 to 27% of Americans, maybe it's upwards of 30, actually have college degrees. The majority of Americans do not have college degrees. So the fact that pretty much 100% of our Congress has college degrees tells you that we're drawing from a smaller subset of our greater population. So we expect our Congress people to be college educated. That's what people have been voting for some time now. As far as professions go, it is dominated by three main professions. The first one is law. So the majority of people in Congress are lawyers, which makes sense because what they're doing is they're passing laws. They are the legislature, and this is their job, is to make laws. Okay? If you're being cynical about this, you'd say, hey, so this is why the law is so complicated, because all these lawyers get in there, they write the laws in ways that make benefits to lawyers, and then when they get out, then they're benefiting themselves by creating business. So the law has to revolve around lawyers doing this. So there is some of that. Yeah, the cynicism is justified, okay? So this can be a good or a bad thing as far as having lawyers as your number one group of people elected to Congress. Number two, business, but mainly banking. It's business, but most of them are from the banking sector, or they go back and forth between the banking sector and Congress. Okay, so this is where your cynicism should be really justified, because you're going to find that there is a fair number of representatives and senators that flip back and forth between being bankers and being lawmakers in Congress. They go back and forth. And you might say, hey, Mr. Haight, I know you're kind of cynical, so take it easy there. But in 2008 and 9, we had the great financial crisis, and the leader of the laws that were supposed to change all that and make it better were Barney Frank in the House and Chris Dodd in the Senate. And they both got together and they wrote the Dodd-Frank bill, which was supposed to fix all the problems that the great financial crisis had resulted from. Now, granted, just about everyone in America was responsible for that great financial crisis to some degree, but certainly the banking industry bore the brunt of the blame because it was just out of control. It is interesting to note that Barney Frank and Chris Dodd, when they wrote this bill, they both resigned from Congress 6 months after it passed, and they both went to work for big banks. Things that make you say, okay. So, are there problems? It didn't look good. Okay. So, the laws that are supposed to rein in the banks were written by two people who then immediately went to work for the banking industry as soon as they wrote it. Yeah. Okay. So, the third one should also give you pause. The third most common profession is career politician. These people have never held a job except for being a politician. That's it. So they don't really relate to the common people. An example of this would be Barack Obama. He got out of college, he went to Chicago, and he became what's called a community organizer. So what he would do is he would help people and he would help groups in a community organize so that they could get money from the federal government, get money from the state government. It was organizing your community in such a way that you can get resources into your little district. And so that's what he did in neighborhoods of Chicago. He was recognized as being especially good at this, and he was asked to run for the state legislature. So he went to Springfield, Illinois, at the state capitol, and he was a legislator there. He was a politician there. He was really good at making speeches, and so he moved up and ran for senator of Illinois, and he got that. And then after that, he ran for president of the United States, and he got that. And so Barack Obama has actually never held a real job, so to speak, a common person's job. So there's a real disconnect between a career politician and the common person out there, what struggles they go through, what things they deal with, what do they have to do for jobs, for employers, for working in the economy. So that one should also send up some red flag warnings because our third leading group of people in Congress are career politicians. This reminds me of the Roman Empire. They had a group called the patrician class, and they were simply there to rule. I mean, they were born and they were trained and they were told, you're special, you're going to be in charge of all these people, you're not really one of them, you're above them. You're here to rule them. Okay? So, career politicians, should be kind of worried about that one. All right? So, those are our three biggest groups of professions that actually inhabit the halls of Congress. All right? People used to ask a lot about marriage and about religion, but those are really of declining importance these days. It used to be that if someone had a solid marriage, then that said, oh, they can get along with someone, they can give and take, they can compromise, they understand duties and responsibilities, and just if you could make another person like you, then the odds are I could probably like you too. That used to be sort of the thinking behind that. Religion, same kind of thing. Do you ascribe to a deeper faith, to a belief in something other than yourself? Do you have some sort of moral foundation upon which you stand and base your decisions? Both of these two in the last 20 years have really just been pushed aside. If I was to ask you about either of these two, especially religion, can you name any of your representatives, for one thing, and can you name their religion? I mean, could you name Trump, Pence, Biden, Kamala Harris? What is their religion? Yeah. So, declining importance. And I don't know that the electorate, the people, really care about these anymore. They seem to be being pushed aside. Some other things, though, that people are caring about a lot more these days is how many women are in Congress. And that has been steadily rising over the past 20 years. In fact, it's been taking off quite a bit. So I think 25% of the representatives and senators in Congress are women right now, and it's probably looking like that's going to rise in the future. Okay? So that's definitely something that's on the ascend right now. Also, minority groups, ethnic minority groups that are being elected to Congress, and they're residing at around 22% of all of Congress right now is made up of ethnic minorities. So again, that's also something that is ascending in importance and increasing in just the number of people getting elected from those category groups. So definite changes in the value systems of America and pushing towards more equality as far as these kind of things go. As far as women getting in there, I think it should be around 50% would be about equal, so that it's not there yet, but it's going in that direction. Okay, so there's that. What really matters most is something called electability. It's that catch-all phrase that brings about charisma, power, respect. Just do they have these internal endearing qualities that get people to vote for them time and time again? And they may not always be logical, but these people represent the electorate. And so are they electable? Can they represent their people? All right? So if you look at Oregon, you're going to find that we used to have Greg Walden as our Eastern Oregon representative. And Greg Walden grew up in the Dalles. He ran a radio station in Hood River. He was an entrepreneur businessman. And the things that he stood highest for were agriculture, logging, rural community development. And so he was the head of the Agriculture Committee in the House of Representatives. So does he represent Eastern and Southern Oregon with those values? You know, ranching, logging, and rural community development. Yeah, and so that's why he was in for 20 some years, because people just kept electing him because he represented them. He represented them and their interests and their core values. And so Greg Walden, you know. Well, if you go over to Portland, I think their representative for a long time now has been Earl Blumenauer. And if you see him, I think he went to Reed University. It's a very interesting, eclectic university experience. It's kind of different from a lot of the others. They don't have grades. They sort of self-assess, and they become self-aware internally, and they go before a panel of professors, and they're granted these sort of, interviews to see how they do. But Reed usually turns out a lot of fairly highly intellectual people. He's got little spectacle glasses, and he always wears a bow tie, and he just wears a tweed jacket. You know, you just see him as a sort of interesting, eclectic intellectual. And so he represents Multnomah County. He represents Portland. And I think he does a fairly good job of representing Portland. Eclectic is the word I keep coming up with here. It's very unique, interesting, different, intellectual. That's what Portland wants to be represented as. And so Earl Blumenauer, that is their representative. And so you will find these very different people from very different places, but does that make them electable? Do they represent their constituents? That is probably the most important thing there. And so as you look at these different representatives, oftentimes they truly do represent the core values of the people living there. That's not always a good thing. I'll tell you some stories coming up a little later that there are representatives that have done some pretty bad things, but you also might say, yeah, they do represent the core values of the people that live there. Okay, so you get kind of what you are. They represent you. So when you look at these folks here, the informal qualifications are way more powerful than the formal qualifications, and you want to make sure that electability is the one you put the star by. You know, do they have that charisma? Do they have that connection to their people so that they can be elected? So that's what it takes to be a congressperson.